everyone. Welcome to the Stage Door Show. I'm Dave Hondel. Tonight, I have with me writer, producer, and actor Daniel Blake Smith, who has a wonderful film that he wrote based on his book of the same name entitled Mr. Wonderful. It's currently making the film festival circuit, and we also have the film's amazing director and also one of the film's producers, Mark David, with us. So welcome to you both.
How you doing?
Hey, great to be here, Dave.
I know, Daniel, you've been on the show before, so welcome back to you. And I really want to get into this film because I was talking before we started recording to Daniel that the trailer had me in tears. So I can imagine what the film would do. And so I know it's making the film festival circuit. I know I believe there was a review Daniel said that just came out about it. Let's talk about the film. And I know Daniel, you wrote the film, you wrote the book. What was the process like of taking your written work and, going through the production process to put it on screen? Because I know that when you write a story, it's got to be like your baby, so to speak. And so you want to make sure that every aspect of this production is done correctly. So what was the producing piece of it like for this piece of work of yours?
It was kind of frantic because Mark made the good point that he had access to certain actors that would be great for this film, including Michael Madsen, if we could get on it right away. And, to his credit, that's what we did. But it might not have been the most ideal way for a writer to think, okay, how can I, cut this down to the core? Because when you take a novel and try and turn it into a film, the task is find the essence of what it is, because you can't film the book, obviously.
Right.
And I did the best I could, but we were hustling to make that window of time that we had with these actors. And we shot the film in 8 days, which just shows you how crazy it was. But, time is money. And when you're doing a low budget film, you can map it out and say, we're going to do this in 20 days. We didn't have that kind of time or money. So it was very focused, intense work. And, Mark's fantastic at that kind of thing. Most people would just probably freak out at trying to make a film like this in 8 days and saying, you're insane, you can't do it. But he can, and we did. And we got, you have to have actors who commit to the material, and they did. They were pros. They knew what they were doing. There weren't any real prima donnas in there. We don't have time for prima donnas, but you got 8 days. Yeah. So I just cut it down to the core. What is the essential story, and what voices had to be heard, and then leave out the rest of it. There's even a phrase among writers that you have to kill your darlings, they say, when you go to make a film, because time is so precious, and you just can't luxuriate in fancy language and all that might work okay in a novel, but it doesn't work in a film. Well,
and that's one other reason to go and buy your book, Mr. Wonderful.
There you go.
So that you get the full story. Mark, basically everybody on this film, veteran actors for the most part, and, the late Michael Madsen, who sadly passed away recently, and also starred Brittany Underwood and Priscilla Barnes, among others. Obviously, it helps to have a veteran cast like this when you only have 8 days to shoot it. But I understand you also not only directed it, but you also were the cinematographer. Is that correct?
Correct. I tend to usually shoot the pictures that I direct as well. I've actually never directed anything that I haven't shot, because to me it's the same visual language. We're telling a story visually, and the camera is the actors and the director's tool. Yeah. So it's one less person to argue with on set,
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that, and on a very small scale, I directed music videos, but I always like to shoot my own work as well, because like you said, it's your vision. You have a vision, and nobody can tell that story like the director, and you can shoot it, frame it the way you want to. And so have you found working with these veteran actors that I'm sure you've worked with several times before, but do you feel like when you work with them, it's something that it's almost like you don't have to give much direction when they understand they're veterans. They understand the script. Is it help you as a director to work with these folks that you don't really have to give a lot of direction to, if that makes sense?
100%. Yeah, it's funny. I've sort of been doing this my entire career, working with older veteran actors. Actually, my in 2007, I did a film that had Cloris Leachman, Rip Torn, Bruce Dern, Val Kilmer, Peter Falk, Diane Ladd, Lynn Shay, lots of older, silver screen stars. And that's it. What you're saying is exactly the case. When you're working with these older veteran actors, they're so experienced that it doesn't matter who you are, you're learning from them.
Right.
And they're they're putting the bar up for you. And these films, with a dynamic cast like this, they sort of make themselves, because instead of having to explain, you know some of the more basic character things to the actors, they're already there and then some, and they've already done the work, so they know these characters better than you. So it's a matter of just how you're going to capture their performance, or if you want to give them notes to get a slightly different performance, because you're trying to um, hone the story in a different direction or different way. But um, what I really really like is the tricks they teach you. You know,
Yeah.
uh, Michael. I had done two, uh, lower budget films that I sort of feel were below him in many ways, with him the year earlier, and I mean earlier the same year. So when Dan brought me Mr. Wonderful, I thought, man, it'd be really great to sort of take him out of that bad guy gangster thing and have him play a college professor, whose father is battling dementia, and we talked about it at length, and we thought, let's go ahead and offer it to him. I Michael's the kind of guy that when you work with him, he calls you up for weeks after the show and just bounces ideas off you and goes, what do you want to do next? And then,
Yeah.
we sort of became fast friends. And when I brought Mr. Wonderful to him, he was really happy to jump aboard, you
Yeah.
know?
That's amazing. Daniel, when you write a story like this, how did you write the screenplay and then bring it to Mark? Or was it something you collaborated with? Because obviously, like you said, you had to cut some things out. So how did you know what to cut out? And did you work with Mark on that? Or was that something you kind of did first, then brought to Mark later?
Well, it was a little bit of both. I knew from having, adapted things before, both my own stuff and everybody else and other people's books and so forth, that you've got to find the core the core story and find the emotional edge to every scene, and you don't have the chance to kind of lay out some big picture. If there's any big picture going on, that's the director's job, not mine. So, but this was unusual in that my brother is an important player in the story. He's an ex-priest, but he had some money and he had been admiring my writing for some time. So he told me, and he just called me up one day and said, I won't tell you the amount of money he was mentioning, but it was enough to get started at this low budget level and make the movie with, way beyond what I thought he had in his bank account. And I had to question him, say, are you okay with this? He said, yes. I want you to take it. And as long as it's not a horror movie, because I do have one of those, he said he knew Mr. Wonderful because we were telling a family story. This was his father as well as mine that we were telling and a story of. And he knew some of the other people in the story. My son is kind of, in a way, this Danny character. Not exactly, but kind of. So he could spark to that, and he did. And that meant, okay, well, get the money over to this LLC so we can start going on this, because again, this window of opportunity opened up for us where we could use Madsen and two or three other prominent actors who otherwise were going to be too busy and we'd lose them. Not that you couldn't find other people, but
Right.
If you get the opportunity to get veteran actors, you got to seize all that, because as Mark would be the first to tell you, half the job of directing is casting it right. And he did a first-rate job of that. So I did to answer your question, though, I did send him uh, what I thought was a pretty good take on drafting the story. I mean, I'd already written the screenplay years in the past, but I just gave up on it because I thought nobody would want to make this.
Yeah.
But I still had to go back and think, okay, now we're going to make it. I'm going to really distill this to its essence. And we went back and forth on that some. Then there's just the sheer writing the budget that you have to do for if you're writing low budget films. You just can't tell the story the way you would want to because you have to think how many days we got 8 or 9 days to shoot this in, X number of locations, and you have to write according to that. But you had to worry about the LA film police coming out.
Yeah.
And that meant that we had to have tussles and fights that took place indoors, so they couldn't see us, shooting the film out in this area. So it was all kinds of compensations and adjustments you have to make on the fly if you're going to make a film like this. And we did.
And one of the questions that I have for you, Mark, because I know being out in LA, and this is not the first time I've heard this, but for a place that's so rich with film history and a lot of films have been made there since the beginning of time, why does it seem so difficult to film in LA when you got like the Atlantas, the Vancouvers, the New Orleans, all these film friendly places, New Mexico? Does it seem hard to film in LA? I mean, to get permits, or is that just something I'm just way off base on?
I don't know how much of this I should say publicly, but hell, I'll do it anyway. I have gotten away with shooting so many films without permits.
Yeah.
And people, as long as you don't get in their way or try to block traffic or, go to a place that's really packed.
Yeah.
People don't care if you shoot here. They're
Right.
cool. Film LA, which I've found is a private company. They're the permitting people. Nobody in LA is a fan of them. If you go through Film LA, everything just skyrockets, and
it's a money thing, right? I mean, it's money.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to give anybody bad advice, but
right.
What I read in multiple places, and I've been told by multiple other producers, are if you go handheld and you don't put the camera down on sticks, they really can't do anything because you're not stopping, you're not keeping people from walking on a sidewalk or crossing the street or whatever. And with the all the YouTube stuff that's being made, it's gotten really loose. I think the reason LA's gotten a reputation for being difficult is it's just an expensive city. So you fly in your cast and crew from somewhere else. Well, you don't really need to because we have so many actors that live here and so many crew people, top-notch people that live here. But hotel costs are expensive.
Yep.
Food is expensive. Equipment's actually quite cheap, honestly, because it's so accessible.
Right.
I've actually really enjoyed shooting in LA a lot lately because it does seem like it's gotten a lot less stiff and difficult, frankly.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, and that's something that I've never filmed in LA, but it's just like I said, just by talking to other directors, it just seems like it's easier sometimes to go to other locations that are giving rebates and things like that. But in a situation like this where you have 8 days to shoot, how is the location? I mean, finding the right locations to accommodate the story, but done so quickly. So how was that to navigate?
When Dan and I were talking, the money that his brother invested in the film was literally just supposed to be our, the seed money to launch a much bigger campaign to raise much more money. And I said, Dan, you know what? Why don't we just shoot with that? And he's like, what? And I'm like, no, seriously, we can do it. I mean, we're not gonna be able to shoot 20 days. We're gonna have to do it in like 8 to 10. But because of the nature of the film, the fact that it's a family drama, dramedy, I like to call it. You know, none of the locations were, difficult. It was, different homes, a college campus, a conference rooms, things like that.
Yeah.
Print, professor
Cemetery.
offices, things like that. So all things that were within our grasp, and locations are expensive in LA, but you can find just about anything.
Yeah.
So we shot a church for the school, for
Oh,
instance.
okay.
And we adapted a lot of the story. The story was supposed to take place in St. Louis, and we adapted it to Malibu, and and we shot um, California for Texas as well, which is something. I'm from Texas, born and raised, just like
Sure.
Dan.
Yep.
So we kind of knew what not to show. And there's parts of Dallas and Houston and Austin that look a lot like LA. So
Yeah.
we're able to get around it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, for sure it did. Daniel, I know that this story was personal to you, of course, and myself too. I mean, it really hit home for me. But you said in the past, write a story that matters to you. And I mean, is this something that, obviously it's maybe parts of it aren't, are fiction, but is this something that was personal to you because of your family? I think you kind of mentioned that earlier.
No, most definitely. It was in some cases hard to write about it,
Yeah.
knowing that people in that family, in my family, who witnessed some of this stuff might take the results the wrong way. I mean, that hasn't happened yet, but this was showing people at their best and their worst. More often, their worst than their best.
Yeah.
And like I'm worried about my son being upset at the way his daddy character is portrayed, even though that's a lot of fiction in there, but not totally. And he hasn't been bothered by it. I don't know, maybe he just didn't want to get into it. But
Yeah.
but just personally to revisit my dad's decline and death and so forth, which was rendered on film, not of course identical at all to how it happened, but in the same, but roughly similar because it sprung from um, dementia, as I'm sure you probably know, most people know, is it's just a crippling thing for the caregivers. It's just the most horrendous thing. Not so much as horrendous, I guess, for the person who has it, but they have the luxury of not being able to know what's going on. But for everybody else, it's like the person's been hollowed out, and you're dealing with another person.
Yeah.
And that's rough to watch the humanity being drained from someone.
Yeah.
And then there's the religious dimension that Danny gets into with the only giving away the rhythm,
Yeah.
Cemetery scene where, people begin to wonder, how could a guy be dealt with, if a God is a good God, why would they let someone suffer like that who would spend his life taking care of people as a doctor?
Yeah.
And those kinds of questions just naturally come up. So that to me, it raised important questions. Not that I was able to answer them, but I thought it was instructive and emotionally valuable to raise them at least, because I think people, these end of life difficult situations, just scream out for that kind of treatment. The question is, what do people in the story learn from it?
Right.
And in the case here, there's the distress of Mr. Wonderful at the end. His demise prompted a chance for people to kind of reinvent themselves, which I wasn't trying to make it seem like it's wonderful, because that was the title of his moniker, but that it was, there's a glimmer of hope when you could kind of find a way to take an adversity like that and see a new path forward.
Yeah.
One of the comps that we used for the film is being a little too grandiose because our film did not have movie stars in it like the one I'm about to mention, but it's a little bit like Silver Linings Playbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that there's a mental health issue, and even though it's a film, I wouldn't say it's about that, but it incorporates that into the
Yeah.
the drama that's going on. Yeah.
But it's definitely, yeah, and it fits in the same family. Look, this is what is so wonderful about independent filmmaking is that you get to make movies that big studios aren't going to make, but there's
Right.
still important stories that need to be told. But no one's going to tell you no, or this exec doesn't like it, or this
Yes.
person doesn't think it's going to make enough money. You go and you tell your story the way you want to tell it. And,
Right.
we got to tell Dan's book, turned into a screenplay that, from our point of view. And that's, honestly, that's what I've spent my career doing, is making independent films the way I want to make them, which is not the studio sensibility, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's what makes indie film strong,
But
is
yeah,
telling new stories.
your
You know,
storytelling. I mean, and first of all, one of the things that I've always, because I've always been a lover of film since I was young, and kind of what got me into filmmaking, in the first place. But one of the things that over the years that I've noticed is, some of the film festivals. There was a handful back years ago. Obviously, Sundance was new, and I think Slam Dance was a kind of a result of Sundance, them not getting films in there and that type of thing. But over the years, a lot of film festivals have become ultra commercialized to the point where some beautiful independent films that are beautifully shot, great stories, won't see the light of day at some of these major film festivals because they don't maybe have the backing of like a big names or financial marketing piece of it. So what are your thoughts on that, Mark, on
it's
the film festivals?
all all the top 10, 20 film festivals, they've completely sold out.
Yeah.
The chances of an actual independent film getting in are next to nothing.
Right.
So I have no desire to attend Sundance ever again. I went like 10 times.
Sure.
But I have no desire to get a film into Sundance or Toronto or Tribeca or any of those film festivals, because I know they won't take anything that isn't backed by a major distributor or has major star talent or isn't an actor's pet project or
Yeah.
well-known directors like passion project. They don't actually show independent films anymore.
Yeah. Right.
They show studio films that were made on a budget.
Yeah. So how do we get these beautiful films that should be seen by the masses of people? How do we get those out there
This
if they
way.
don't? Yeah, I mean, right,
Yeah.
exactly, grassroots, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is how you have to do it. And I was on Film Freeway the other day, and there's a lot of great festivals out there that are kind of on a smaller scale, but they're attended by a lot of people. And
Sure.
I think that is a good way to get, and I think it's probably an answer to these bigger film festivals not showing these
Yeah.
these indie films. So to be part of these smaller festivals, but there's a lot of them. That might be great for filmmakers that are listening right now to this, to enter a lot of film festivals, because they give discounts, and you can obviously pick and choose which ones you want to go to. But is that something that you recommend, going on to like Film Freeway and
Absolutely.
entering a lot of
Absolutely. And
yeah.
enter the mid-tier film festivals, because they're still the real deal.
Yeah.
They don't have to answer to massive sponsors or studios saying, "Hey, save us this slot." They're showing films. Most people start film festivals because they love film,
Right.
and they need to figure out how to make a living and love film, because they're maybe not necessarily filmmakers themselves. So this is the way that they get to enjoy and live a life surrounded with what they love. So whereas these bigger film festivals, they've just gotten so commercial that they're not showing, actual indie films anymore. But these mid-tier ones are, and all of them are on Film Freeway. But there's also a lot of scam festivals too, where they don't even have a festival.
It's about the money. Yeah.
Yeah, you send in the money and then you win some bullshit award at some bullshit film festival in Croatia that, it's like one guy in a desk.
Right. He's just taking your money.
You know, like,
And you could use a laurel. You can use a laurel for your,
yeah, right,
thing.
exactly. So it's like just like everything in media, music and film and everything, it's been diluted to a point where there will be a resurgence of the cream rising to the top soon.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the best things about festivals, and this is kind of sad, but it's also important too, is that because theatrical releases are so hard to get, almost impossible these days, film festivals offer you that rare opportunity to put your film in front of an audience.
Yeah.
And you get to see in live, real time, how they're reacting to it. And that is a marvelous thing that you can't say, well, just go theatrical. Even if a distributor wants your film, they'll frequently say, forget that. We'll just try and find a platform or a streaming service to get you on there. And you'll never see a live audience in your life if you don't take it to a festival. And that's what we're doing right now. We've had wonderful reactions from people in St. Louis and Rehoboth Beach and Austin. We're going to LA. Mark will be there for the Culver City Film Festival. We're going to Phoenix in January. And by the way, Mark, it looks like Oxford's going to pick us up.
Oh, great. I love Oxford.
Texas Heart, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some others I think we have a good shot at. So that gives you different audiences. Now they got their own representation issues. You can say that a lot of filmmakers go in there. It is the average Joe go to a festival, not as much as they could or should, but you still get in some places like Beaufort and Oxford, the people from the town that come out in droves to watch films.
Yeah.
What are you in on that?
When we were at Rehoboth Beach, I guess it was about a month ago, the majority of the crowd were just film lovers.
Yeah, that's right.
And not people that worked in the film business.
Filmmakers.
It was great to sit and watch the movie with, our target audience.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Such a callous word, but people that
God forbid you have a target. Yeah, you have to see the movie. Yeah.
I don't even want to talk like that anymore.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more of a purist I become. It's like at the end of the day, if I like the movie, I'm happy.
That's honestly.
It. Yeah, because it's just like I come from a musical background, and you can write a song, and not everyone's going to like it.
Right.
There's some people it'll be their favorite song, and they'll,
Daniel says this, and what I just said, it's write what matters to you. Don't try to be something you're not. If you don't try to create something you don't believe in or that you don't like, if you do what you believe in, people will be attracted by that, I believe.
Yeah, I always like to do two things: connect with people, which is being relatable, and then surprise and connect. If you give them something they haven't seen before,
true,
makes them rethink something, provokes their emotions or their thoughts, but it's still relatable, because a lot of filmmakers, and this is true across the board, not so much really studios, because they're always testing everything and test audiences to make sure that somebody is going to
focus groups.
But independent filmmakers can sometimes get into navel gazing, and it's just a film that they just love. And the guys did Project Greenlight used to say something. I went to a WGA meeting once, and I forget the guy's name, that worked with Matt Damon, the Project Greenlight guy. Young people in the audience are asking for advice. What should they do? He said, just one thing: do not forget your audience.
Right.
And a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
And you can't go too far with that, because you got to tell your story, but you have to think, is this something that if somebody who didn't have these experiences, can they still connect to them? And if they can, go for it. But if they can't, you might need to rework or rethink what you're trying to write or what you're trying to shoot, because it has to be something it doesn't be something that they've done exactly. What happened to my dad in dementia, and what happened, like I had my troubles at the university, but nothing like what this guy had, believe me. But I found an extreme version of this that very much happens. People presented with buyout packages all the time, and basically, in a nice way, fired from the university.
Yeah.
And I wanted to depict what that did to this guy. And he found a way out by the most surprising thing possible. learning all this stuff about his father.
Yeah, anybody that's been phased out of a long-term career, or um, had a parent or aunt or uncle with dementia, is going to find you know this story really appealing to them because they can identify with it. And the Danny character, it's funny, Dan was talking about how he was worried how his son would react. I mean, I think Danny's a stud. He's the most fun in the movie.
He is a fun guy.
He's the guy that lives by his own code, which is whatever makes you happy, basically.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was actually the theme for another movie I made, the one I did with like Diane Ladd and everybody. That was literally the tagline. So and everybody has a Danny
Yeah.
in family.
Everybody has a little bit of Danny in them. It's just that most people suppress it because they think it's,
Yeah.
it's not good. It's not good for you. And
Or they don't show it publicly. Yeah.
and he was just he's just the opposite of his dad in the story, because he tells him at one point, "I'm not like you, Dad. I don't live inside my head." No, Danny lives from the skin out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's
Really
great. I
does.
mean, like, we learn from characters like Danny,
Yeah, you do.
not to be so stiff. And
Yeah.
it's a really it's a very colorful film, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah.
I hope it gets out there, and people get to enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it.
Well, one thing before I get to my last questions, Mark, there was a scene in the trailer that where I actually started tearing up. And I don't know what process Michael had in this particular moment, but he broke down basically, and I don't know how he was able. I mean, it was so believable, and it was so like it hit me immediately that I was like, oh my God, it brought tears to my eyes. And I just, even now thinking about that scene, so when you direct somebody like that, like we talked about earlier, there's very little direction to a veteran actor that understands the script. But in a moment like that, where you need that emotion from that person, do you shoot that multiple times, or is it something where if you get it, move on? I mean,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely, you try to get it as quickly as possible and move on. That scene in particular, I mean, I hate to say it, but Michael had experienced a lot of loss in the last few years before he passed away. One of his sons passed away, and I
Oh.
think that's where he was drawing from in that scene.
Sure.
Because he definitely, another scene we had shot earlier that day, that's where he and I talked about his son for the
Yeah.
first time, and it was strange because it was on set. I like I was saying, he's the kind of guy that would call you up at 1 o'clock in the morning and just start talking, and you'd end up talking until 3, right?
Right.
So, but I think the reason he brought it up is he wanted it to be really real, his pain to be really real, and that's why, that every time I see that scene, it
Yeah.
brings me to tears too, because he was feeling the actual pain of the
Yeah,
moment.
you could tell. You could definitely tell. He drew from that for sure.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions left real quick, but I'm gonna start with you, Daniel. What kind of advice can you give to the new filmmaker out there that's listening? Maybe they're a writer, maybe they're a producer, director, or an actor. What kind of advice for the industry would you give somebody that's just getting into it? Because I know, you've been in it for a long time, and when you started, it might be different than it is now for somebody new getting into the business. But what kind of advice would you have today for somebody getting into this industry?
Well, it does depend a little bit on what they want to do in film. If they want to be a writer, I would still say just get on a film set, be a PA, find out what it feels like, and what it's all about, to come together as a collaborative, because it is a collaborative thing. That's the hardest thing for writers to accept, because we're very much buy into this notion that, hey, no script, no movie. We do this all ourselves, but it's ludicrous, because the collaboration, from people like Mark and doing 2 collaborations, being a DP and a director, that brings a whole new elevation to the story you didn't even think about. Not to mention actors who inhabit characters and give it a flavor you could not imagine, you might hope for, but you just go off in tangents you did not see. Uh, but for writers, I guess I do think, the independent world, our favorite phrase is in independent film, story is king. And so you really need to think about what makes a good story. And you don't have to go to a set to do that. You will learn about how that story can become more visual. The great independent filmmaker John Sayles had this great book called Thinking in Pictures. And what he believes, like good all filmmakers, is you've got to visualize what you're doing. And that's where all these other craftspeople come into play. Writers don't come with great visual sense necessarily. They acquire it. They need to. But really, the gaffer and lighting people and sound and, even post-production and all this stuff elevates, transforms the film in a really important way that the only way to get good at it and to get well versed in it is to spend time on a film set doing whatever you can. And I say that as somebody who's only done it partially. I mean, Mark can attest to the fact that I can't act, but I've pretended to for a few moments on films. I don't have any skills.
I wouldn't say you can't act. I would just say you're a stronger writer.
Let's put it this way: nobody would pay me to act. How about that? They might pay me not to act. So, but watching people and watching their process is the next best thing. If I can't do it, watch how Mark directs and DPs and so forth to get ideas about how you set up scenes. I think Mark has this great skill where he also can work as an editor while he's making the film, where he's thinking about music and the way to cut the film already while you're on the set. That's a fantastic skill that I can only admire from a distance.
Yeah.
Getting on a set and just starting to learn whatever trades and crafts that you're capable of is the best way to immerse yourself if you're a raw beginner.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. I'm sure, Mark, I was going to ask you the same question, but I saw you nodding there. So a lot of the things Daniel was saying is I'm sure you agree with.
Yeah. Quick story. The first set I ever worked on was Richard Linklater's movie Suburbia. They were shooting.
Wow.
And I just walked up to one of the guys in the art department, pretended like I was on the crew and said, "What do you need me to do?" And he just was like, "Go grab that."
You made yourself a PA?
Yeah. And then like a couple of days later, they found out I wasn't real crew and kicked me off.
You were wearing a headset.
No, I wasn't wearing a walkie. It was art department, so I think they were one day ahead. They were literally. I think there's like a convenience store in the show, and I'm the guy that screwed the telephone into the concrete.
That's awesome.
But I mean, just like Dan said, get on every set you can. I mentor a lot of students from CSUN. I live about a block from CSUN in Northridge.
Oh, okay.
And I get a lot of film school students that are in their last year, and after a week on set with me, they're like, "Jesus Christ, I learned more in a week than I learned in film school." And I think it's important to do both,
Right.
I didn't go to film school. I talked my folks into giving me the money for the first year of film school to go make my first feature.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I wasn't a very, I don't know if the word is scholastic or what type guy, right? I was a hands-on.
And here Daniel's a professor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just like I learned by doing. That's how I learned how to play music. It's how I learned how to, and by reading stuff.
Right.
So, so I think my advice would be exactly what Dan was saying, is just get on a set at any cost. Like even if it costs you money, get on a set and learn and soak it all in. And if you love it and it was meant to be, it's going to stick.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. I love to hear that. My last question, I'll start with you, Mark. When it's all said and done, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Funny you ask. My mother just passed away in the last couple of weeks, and so that's been on my mind quite a bit.
Sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. She certainly left a beautiful legacy behind. look, my first job in life is to be the dad to a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So they're the most important thing to me. But in terms of my career, I just want to be known as a filmmaker who did what he wanted. You know,
Yeah.
like uh, as a cinematographer, which is how I earn the majority of my income. I try to make everything visually stunning, whether it's ugly or gorgeous or somewhere in between. It needs to carry some weight.
Yeah.
Every image should carry weight. As a director and filmmaker, I really, some of the directors that I look up to have had very spotty careers because they've taken chances, whether it's Stanley Kubrick or Martin Scorsese. Brian De Palma is one of my favorite directors.
Yeah.
Tony Scott is one of my favorite directors. Jim Jarmusch, guys like that. They kind of just did what they want. Some of them did it on a huge scale, and some of them did it on a small scale. But at the end of the day, when you're watching one of their films. And
Right.
not that like I have some ego I want to wipe all over a movie. It's just that I, you know, I've done so many different genres. Like, the film I did right before Mr. Wonderful, well, that was actually sort of similar in genre. It was called Sunlight, but it's not out yet. But I did a movie called Starfucker about Hollywood, and it's
Oh,
like,
Eric Fellows.
yeah,
Yeah. He's a friend of the show. So I know Eric.
yeah, I love Eric.
Yeah.
Eric was the lead,
He was in Mr. Wonderful too.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you saw him going on the swimming pool. Yeah.
yeah, and he was the lead in Dan and
Yeah.
I's first movie together, Texas Heart. Starfucker is a completely opposite movie from Mr. Wonderful, and
Right.
I
I
like to
saw
think
it.
so you can see I
I saw
really
it.
want
Yeah.
to have a diverse portfolio of
Right. Right.
stories to tell,
Yeah.
because life's not boring.
Yeah. Exactly. And I'm going to ask you the same question, Dan, but I'm going to preface it by this because, I asked this question because, legacy means a lot to me because not for myself necessarily, but, you know, growing up in the 70s, 80s, there's certain, you know, uh, entertainers, like Bob Hope, even I saw Priscilla Barnes is in this movie, and I watched her, during that time frame, and I just, who's preserving these legacies of these people? You talk to somebody right now who's in college or in high school, they have no idea who these wonderful, actors were that came before them, and I don't know if it's a reason. A reason, one of the reasons is like social media, TikTok society, where we're just looking for the newest, thing to look at and laugh at, whatever. And they're not like studying the history of like what came before us. And it's like, so that's why I think legacy is so important to me, because I don't want people to be forgotten. And you being a history expert, what does legacy mean to you? And is it important for us to preserve the legacy of not only events, historic events, but people from our history, including people in entertainment?
Well, I kind of came up in directly a little bit in the film itself. I just see myself as a storyteller, and get better and different. I think I'm getting better at it, but a person who believes in the power of story, because that's really how we make sense of who we are as people in the world. We tell stories about ourselves, to ourselves, and to other people. And so the wisdom and the insight and the emotional truths that we live by come through these stories that we tell, at least as writers. And, Mark is a writer also, but even if he weren't, in the visual stories that he tells, that's a very powerful form. Some would say more powerful than the written word, in terms of conveying a sense of who we are, what we could be, what we're not accomplishing, where we're failing, where our ambitions and our hopes are, and are they being realized? That so it starts in the heart and it lives to somebody else's heart. And if you tell stories that way, then I think you've got a good chance of creating a legacy right there in the person watching or hearing, or just thinking through your story. So I do approach it from a writer's standpoint primarily because that's what I've done. But to me, that's when you start putting pages on the words on the page, then you're starting to articulate an idea about feelings and a sense of self and a sense of direction for your life and for other people's lives. And if you're telling a story that has merit and meaning, then you have a legacy right there. And always asking questions. I think my wife says it jokingly, but she's not far from the truth. She says, "On my grave, it's going to say, 'Here lies Dan Smith. He had questions.'" And
it's always inquisitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think that's the only way to learn is to ask questions. Even though they might be dumb questions. Some people might say, "You don't know that." But if you find an answer, then, well, yeah, now I do. And it's not just information, of course. I'm talking about emotional truths and values and insights. And so to me, not that a film needs to be pencils up, everybody take notes kind of thing. That's kind of boring, but it should provoke you emotionally and maybe a little bit intellectually speaking, but just make you think about stuff. If you can't, I want a movie to linger in the audience's mind for a while and not just end the minute they walk out of the lobby.
Yeah.
Let them thinking about it.
Yeah. So funny you say that, Dan. Yeah. I've always told people I want to make movies that make people think, and if they're not talking about it for at least 15 minutes after the movie's
on the way home,
then it's a piece of shit.
Well, yeah.
Right, like,
but it's like I think if movies are like music, or like a painting, it's whatever the person sees. That it's one person's gonna love it, one person might not like it, and that's okay. I mean, not everybody's gonna like the same piece of work. They might see things differently, or they might have a different upbringing, or they might have a different set of values or whatever. I mean, that they might either like something or not like something. But I think that's the fascination of art as well. It's like, some people are going to love it, some people won't. But if you, like you said, if at least it's spurring conversation, and they're talking about it in the car on the way home, you did something to spur that conversation on, and you can't either way. So I think that, it's never a bad thing to spur a conversation either way.
Totally.
Well, I can't thank you both enough. It's really been an honor, and this is one of the longest podcasts I've done. And here I'm telling you guys, but I absolutely loved it, every minute of it. So I really appreciate your time, both of you, and best of luck to Mr. Wonderful. Like I said, just from the trailer itself, I mean, I'm hooked. Can't wait for Mr. Wonderful to get those raving reviews. So, thanks again, guys. Appreciate your interest. A lot of fun and learned a lot. I even learned something from Mark. How about that? There you go. Thanks, guys.